Afghanistan is a nation teetering on the brink. 2 years after the Taliban seized control, the country finds itself grappling with a multitude of crises. The promises of peace and stability have given way to a stark reality of hunger, fear, and oppression. Millions are caught in the grip of a devastating humanitarian crisis, struggling to survive each day. The rights of women and girls have been systematically dismantled, erasing their presence from public life. The economy lies in ruins, leaving healthcare and other essential services hanging by a thread. Violence and insecurity are rampant, fueled by the Taliban's brutal tactics and the persistent threat of the Islamic State Khorasan province, or ISKP. Journalists and critics face the constant threat of arrest and disappearance, effectively silencing any form of dissent. The international community, once hopeful for a brighter future, grapples with the Taliban's unwillingness to address human rights abuses and form an inclusive government. Afghanistan's plight is a stark reminder of the human cost of conflict and the fragility of peace. Afghanistan is facing one of the world's most dire humanitarian crises. Over 23 million people, more than half the population, are in desperate need of humanitarian assistance. The United Nations estimates that a staggering 12.4 million are experiencing severe food insecurity, meaning they are on the brink of starvation. The situation is particularly dire for children, with malnutrition rates reaching alarming levels. The causes of this crisis are multifaceted. The collapse of the Afghan economy following the Taliban takeover, coupled with the suspension of foreign aid, has crippled the country's ability to provide for its citizens. Droughts and other natural disasters have exacerbated the situation, decimating crops and livestock. Adding to the plight is the severe lack of funding for humanitarian efforts. The UN's Humanitarian Response Plan, seeking billions to address the crisis, remains woefully underfunded, receiving only a fraction of what is desperately needed. Since their return to power, the Taliban have systematically stripped away the rights of women and girls, erasing their presence from public life. Secondary schools and universities have been shuttered to female students, denying them the right to education. Women have been barred from most forms of employment, forcing many families deeper into poverty. Their movement is severely restricted, requiring a male guardian or mahram to accompany them in public or even to access essential services. The Taliban have also imposed strict dress codes, mandating head-to-toe coverings. Women are banned from parks, gyms, and other public spaces, effectively confining them to their homes. These draconian measures are a clear violation of fundamental human rights and have drawn widespread condemnation from the international community. The Taliban's actions represent a giant leap backward for Afghan women and girls, robbing them of their hard-won freedoms and condemning them to a life of invisibility and oppression. The Afghan healthcare system, already fragile before the Taliban takeover, is now on the verge of collapse. Years of conflict, coupled with chronic underfunding and the recent economic crisis, have left hospitals and clinics struggling to function. Essential medical supplies are in short supply, and many qualified healthcare professionals have fled the country. The situation is particularly dire in rural areas where access to healthcare was already limited. The Taliban's restrictions on women have further exacerbated the crisis in healthcare. With women barred from most forms of employment, including healthcare, there's a severe shortage of female doctors, nurses, and midwives. This has had a devastating impact on women and girls, who often require female healthcare providers due to cultural and religious sensitivities. As a result, many women and girls are being denied essential medical care, putting their lives at risk. Section 5. Living in fear, violence and insecurity. Despite the Taliban's promises of peace and stability, Afghanistan remains plagued by violence and insecurity. The Taliban themselves have been implicated in numerous human rights abuses, including extrajudicial killings, enforced disappearances, and arbitrary detentions. Reports of torture and other forms of ill treatment are widespread. The group's intelligence agency, the General Directorate of Intelligence, or GDI, is notorious for its brutal tactics and operates with impunity. Adding to the volatile security situation is the persistent threat of the Islamic State Khorasan province, or ISKP. This affiliate of the Islamic State group has repeatedly targeted civilians, particularly Hazaras and other religious minorities, in horrific attacks. The ISKP has claimed responsibility for bombings at mosques, schools, and other public gatherings, causing widespread fear and insecurity. The Taliban and ISKP are locked in a bitter power struggle, further fueling the cycle of violence that continues to grip the country. Section 6. A country adrift, the refugee crisis. The ongoing turmoil in Afghanistan has forced millions to flee their homes, creating one of the world's largest and fastest-growing refugee crises. Neighboring countries, particularly Pakistan and Iran, have borne the brunt of this exodus, hosting millions of Afghan refugees for decades. However, these countries, already grappling with their own economic and social challenges, are struggling to cope with the influx. This has led to increased pressure on resources and tensions between host communities and refugees. The situation for Afghan refugees is dire. Many live in overcrowded and unsanitary conditions, lacking access to basic necessities like clean water, food, and healthcare. Children are particularly vulnerable, often deprived of education and at risk of exploitation and abuse. The international community has pledged support for Afghan refugees, but much more needs to be done to provide them with a safe haven and a chance to rebuild their lives. Section 7. Silencing dissent media and the Muzzle. Since taking power, the Taliban have moved swiftly to silence any form of dissent, targeting journalists, activists, and critics with intimidation, arbitrary detention, and enforced disappearance. The Afghan media landscape, once vibrant and diverse, has been decimated, with many outlets forced to close or operate in exile. Those who remain face constant threats and censorship, unable to report freely on the realities of life under Taliban rule. The Taliban have imposed strict restrictions on media content, banning music, television dramas, and any reporting deemed critical of the regime. Journalists who dare to defy these dictates face harassment, detention, and even torture. Several prominent journalists have been arrested and held without trial, sending a chilling message to those who dare to challenge the Taliban's narrative. This systematic crackdown on press freedom has created a climate of fear and self-censorship, effectively silencing any form of independent journalism in Afghanistan. Section 8. The Weight of Impunity. Despite mounting evidence of human rights abuses and violations of international law, the Taliban have yet to be held accountable for their actions. The international community has condemned these abuses and called for investigations, but concrete action has been limited. The Taliban's control over the judiciary and their refusal to cooperate with international mechanisms have created a culture of impunity, emboldening them to continue their repressive tactics without fear of consequence. The absence of accountability not only perpetuates the cycle of violence and abuse, but also undermines efforts to promote reconciliation and lasting peace in Afghanistan. Without justice for victims and consequences for perpetrators, the wounds of the past will continue to fester, hindering any possibility of a just and equitable future. The international community must prioritize accountability, both for past crimes and ongoing abuses, to break the cycle of impunity and pave the way for a more hopeful future for Afghanistan. Section 9. A troubled border, Pakistan and Afghanistan. The relationship between Pakistan and Afghanistan remains deeply complex and fraught with tension. The porous border between the two countries has long been a source of contention, with accusations of cross-border incursions and support for militant groups. The Taliban's return to power in Afghanistan has further strained relations, particularly with the resurgence of the Tehrik-i-Taliban Pakistan, a Pakistani Taliban group operating from safe havens within Afghanistan. The TTP has stepped up attacks inside Pakistan, targeting security forces and civilians alike. Pakistan has responded with airstrikes inside Afghanistan, targeting suspected TTP hideouts. However, these strikes have often resulted in civilian casualties, further inflaming tensions. The Taliban, for their part, have denied harboring the TTP, but have also warned Pakistan against further cross-border attacks. The volatile situation along the Afghanistan-Pakistan border highlights the interconnected security challenges facing the region, and the urgent need for dialogue and cooperation to address the root causes of instability.